people are impressed by your success, but they connect through your vulnerability and your failures and your chinks in your armor and all that. That's how we connect. And that's why I said, Sean, I can have anyone successful on this podcast and we'd have a great conversation. But we're going to connect to people through your failures, your struggles, your imperfections. And that's why I said I want you to tell the story.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We are happy to have you. This is a leadership podcast where we're focused on having the highest impact possible. And I bring in some great guests, including today, my friend Sean Martin in the studio live with me. I had two conditions for Sean being here with me when we met in New York. I said, one, you got to tell your story. And two, you got to smoke a cigar with me. And he said, don't threaten me with a good time. So
nice.
We're here.
Sounds like me.
So we are here. So Sean is an entrepreneur. He is, most importantly, a husband and father to how many now?
Two.
All
Two.
right.
Wife wants more, but we'll see.
We'll see. God willing.
Yeah.
And you guys making that joint decision together. But it's usually the wife's decision.
Yeah, well, wise man. Spoken from a wise man's mouth. I won't even elaborate on that one.
Well, I will say
myself in trouble.
I will say this because I'm done at 4. And after we had 3, it was like 6 months into it. We're laying in bed, and we still have a baby essentially, under 1-year-old. And she rolls over and Jenna says, "Do you feel like we're done?" and I had to pause, right? Because like you're wondering in your head, like, what answer do I give to make sure it's hopefully the right answer? But I said no, because we had always talked about 3 to 4, and she was like, I said no, I think one more, and she goes, me too. I was like, oh, phew.
Nice.
It was the right answer.
Nice. I'm finding a lot of the very successful people that I've been blessed enough to come in contact with recently, through my travels and masterminds, they have quite a few children. So I always wonder if it's in the cards or not for us. But then there's also the age thing.
Yeah.
I'm always a little concerned about, being an old dad, which I guess I'm already kind of there. But again, there's no right way to do this thing called life. There's just better ways and whatever. But, the partnership that you have, with your significant other, is it definitely is a team effort. Yeah. So you have to go into that, with a level head and on the same page for sure. I'm always learning because I wasn't fortunate enough to grow up in a traditional, nuclear family. It was single mom was dad, mom was mom was everything. So unfortunately, that's all too common these days. Well, I don't say unfortunately. Unfortunately, from my opinion, it's all too common these days. But, obviously it can work. And I remember you giving me some great advice because I mentioned that, a big part of me and just making a gigantic shift in my thinking and in life was my son being born and talking about my son being my legacy. And, later on we were in a small group, but it was just you and I remember vividly, you were like, listen, I just had one thing, you wanted to share. And it was like, your daughters are your legacy too. And, that stuck. Obviously, I'm bringing it up. And that was, last year that we met. So the reason being was I just wasn't fortunate enough to grow up in a family structure or see necessarily healthy family dynamics. I had aunts and uncles that were married. I had aunts and uncles that were divorced. I had, my own situation. But I didn't have anything directing me toward what you just said, which is, hey, honey, you feel like we should have another one?
Yeah.
And, my wife didn't have the greatest of family structures either. So we were just winging it. And we're still kind of winging it, but with more intention and with more purpose these days.
But like you said, you put yourself around good people too. And that's like, people like myself that have the courage to come up to you and say something, because that's vulnerable. Like, I'm giving you family advice. We just met. But like, I know you don't care, but I don't care about speaking my mind either. And that's why we vibe. But it was one of those things where you surround yourself with good people that have been around good parenting and been around or have experience as parents and you know, want to emulate them or see that they had this good, healthy family structure. Hey, how'd you do that? What was the secret to your habit? Like, because I know you're a good question asker as well. So those are the things that you can do, is like, we all have that ability to break our generational curses.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I talked about that on my podcast before with, you know, my dad only mentioned that he loved me a few times. On one hand, I could count by the time I was 18. And now he's done a much better job in my adult life, and I always give him credit for that. But that did affect me as a child. So I do make sure that I tell my kids that I love them every day.
Right.
Right. So you learn these things. Like, I didn't have to continue that legacy of not telling my kids I loved them. I changed the legacy.
Right. I think just kind of repeating a pattern, or, you know, people may do it unconsciously. However, there's people who do it consciously and use it as an excuse. I've met, you know, quite a few people over the years that, you know, let's say their parents, you know, one of them or maybe both of them were users, drug abusers, alcoholics. And I've seen people come out of the other side better for that, and never having picked up a drug or a drink, because they saw the damage that would do. And then there's people who, you know, oh, well, they just followed the path, or they claim it was genetic and they found the alcohol gene. And, you know, I don't know the science behind it. I just know that based on everything I've experienced in my life, we have the power to make that change. But we have to desire to change first. And that comes through asking questions. That comes through getting around people who have what it is that you're seeking to attain, whether it be a solid family structure or a successful business or whatever. We only know this much, so little. And if we're unwilling to look at other viewpoints, you know, we're probably going to stay stagnant. I was just telling Josiah in the other room, he's a young man who's very ambitious, and he's around us. And he's been fortunate to see, you know, some successful people and forward-thinking people. And he's modeling his life at an early age to do something great with his life. And he finds that, you know, he wants to bring along the people that he loves.
Yeah.
And it's always a point of pain, because you cannot make someone do anything that they're unwilling to do, including the stuff that will make them, you know, better or more fulfilled. So it really boils down to a choice. You know, I saw certain things, but I don't know, something inside of me always wanted more. We're on the subject of family, and I never saw myself as a family guy. My wife kind of pushed for it. She grew up with, you know, a brother and a sister, and she always saw herself having, you know, kids, and I never really saw it. And she had to kind of keep poking the bear to get me to commit to, hey, let's have a kid. And then for 4 years, I was in my own place of still not being happy with that situation, and, you know, using alcohol to kind of numb, and going out to dinners, and, you know, just kind of avoiding putting in the work that it was going to take to be a good father and a good husband.
Do you think that had to do with your upbringing and not having that solid family base?
I think it definitely doesn't give you a blueprint for what to do. And I personally had no desire for it, because I still had in the back of my mind this idea that marriages don't work, or, you know, families aren't happy, because, you know, I didn't really see what you see or what I'm seeing now, because I wasn't around the right people. So I always encourage people to seek out or go into rooms, or masterminds is a catchphrase these days, but go into a room where you're going to meet people that are like-minded, but not from the same geographic pool that you come from. So if you go to a real estate seminar in New York City, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, whatever, you're going to meet real estate professionals from the same area, and they may be from very different backgrounds, and there's no cookie cutter person that goes into that room. But if you want to meet the high level best of the best, you usually have to travel and seek out those groups of people. And then you'll find them in a room, and you'll kind of know right off the bat. You know, maybe we shared a few minutes of conversation total on the time clock, but we knew it was like, that guy's, he's all right. That guy's all right. And, you know, you encouraged me to tell my story when I was ready. And, you know, I've been doing that ever so slowly, but just doing it. And, you know, again, just if I hadn't met you or if I hadn't met Matt Bertho, who has me here today, I wouldn't have told that story the first time, which allowed me to do it the second and the third and the fourth and so on and so forth. And now that is the crux of my brand and my experience is that story.
Well, let's talk about that real quick because people
Sure.
aren't impressed, or I'm sorry, people are impressed by your success, but they connect through your vulnerability and your failures and your chinks in your armor and all that. That's how we connect. And that's why I said, Sean, I can have anyone successful on this podcast and we'd have a great conversation, but we're going to connect to people through your failures, your struggles, your imperfections. And that's why I said, I want you to tell the story when you were ready.
Yeah.
So you used to hang around the wrong people, and take us back to your, you know, mid to late 20s when things weren't going the way they are today.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm originally from project in the Bronx, housing project in the Bronx.
You guys couldn't tell he was from the Bronx with that,
right.
with that accent?
Did I say coffee? I always say I didn't know I had an accent until I started traveling. And then I always laugh because I think they have an accent, but I'm the one with the accent. You know, grew up single mom, working class, but never able to escape the poverty of being a single mom because, you know, one income isn't going to allow you to pay the bills or cover the, you know, the mortgage or anything like that. So we grew up in the projects, and though my mother worked all her life, which inadvertently, unknowingly instilled a work ethic in me, I was surrounded by a lot of people that were generationally cursed, you know, in the true sense of the word, like no ambition, no hope, generational welfare recipients, depending on the government to cover their rent and their checks and their food, and just no ambition, no idea of hope. They learned to game the system because what was the point of going to work at McDonald's for, you know, $8 an hour at that point? You know?
Yeah.
Education wasn't a thing. So my mother was college educated, and therefore I went to college. It wasn't like it was planned out, mapped out. I just saw that my mother went to college as an immigrant and came into this country at 11 or 12 years old and graduated on time at 18 from high school and 22 from college. So it was a given that I had to do that, right? And this is how things lead you down the path. So I had that good example in my mom, and I always worked. I went to school. I finished college. But I also had the allure of the streets. So I grew up during the 90s when the crack cocaine epidemic was really sweeping through the country, and particularly the inner cities. So that was the backdrop for my value system outside of the home. My boys in the street, dealing crack, holding guns, getting into shit. You know, arrests were normal. Guys going away for 25 to life was normal. You know, not necessarily my besties or people I was hanging with. I wasn't that deep into that lifestyle because I was still going to school. And I still had a good example at home. And, you know, but there's a pull. And I always say the streets are sexy. And if you're from them and you know how to navigate them, you can play in the streets. And that's what was happening. I was a guy who had a full-time job as a marketing rep, and full-time, I'll do the air quotes because I learned that early on, the power of relationships would allow me to make other people money. And if I could make other people money, then I could kind of be on easy street. I didn't have to go clock in and out of a job every day. So most of my 20s was spent as, you know, marketing or sales, and I did well doing that. But I also was hustling clothing, which at the time was popular. The knockoff True Religion jeans and Nike Uptowns and Jordans. And I don't know if I ever told you this story at the event, but I took $900 that a buddy had owed me. A buddy had owed me $900 through drug money that he owed me. Because we also dabbled in that on the side because, you know, there was always a need for, all right, weed, or if you knew a guy that had cocaine. I wasn't a cocaine dealer, but, you know, this guy had cocaine. I know where to get cocaine. I can get you cocaine. He doesn't have a connection. So I'll be the middleman and I'll make a few dollars in the process. So these things were all, again, I have to kind of set the story up because these are not things that are normal, but they were viewed as normal. And that's what eventually led me to getting in trouble. Was I'm hustling, this gear, I'm hustling drugs. Not a big time drug dealer by any stretch, but who the fuck do you know that has a full-time marketing job and goes out and does all these other things on the side? But I knew that was going to get me the money that I really wanted to live the lifestyle that I really wanted, which was nothing glamorous, but making $50,000, $60,000 a year to go to a job, that's not that great. Back then it was all right. Now it wouldn't be shit, but I could easily double that by doing these other things on the side. So just playing the streets, running to strip clubs to sell juicy couture sweatsuits to the strippers.
Velour, of course, right?
The velour, baby. Only the best. Made in China. Bought on 28th Street from the Nigerians and the Africans. Just a colorful existence. And since we met, I've kind of peeled back the layers of my story where I really didn't piece together how I got here, right? Like, you end up in a shitty place and then you have nothing but time to think about how you got there. So at 29 years old, I go out one evening with some family and friends, and we're at a very seedy place, low level, just a place I had no business being in. So even though I'm playing in the streets, there's the mud of the streets, and I was in the place where the mud of the streets was. Like, not even the hustlers and the drug dealers, like the winos and the fucking crackheads and just drug addicts and shit I had no business being around. Because even there I stood out, and to a group of people in the in the lounge, club, bar, whatever you want to call it, I stood out. Like, they knew I didn't belong there. I was a little too well dressed, a little too well spoken, and a little too handsome to be in that place.
Way too handsome.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're not so bad yourself. And yeah, this group of people picked me out to be a mark for a robbery, and through God's grace. And through the universe's plan, that did not play out the way that they intended it to. And when me and my colleagues got the upper hand, we actually became the criminals, and we became the aggressors, and we did harm to others. And that ended up landing me 2 years in prison. And, I'm still not completely comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
As you can tell, because I'm very smooth and easygoing, and right now I'm kind of caught for words because the truth is never pretty. The truth is never, sunshine and rainbows, but it is the comeback that makes all the difference. So,
So while you're thinking, let me ask a question, because this
Sure.
always helps. When I'm thinking, if someone asks me a question, give me a moment to sit with it. Is because that's not an easy story to tell. It's not an easy, because there's guilt and shame that goes along with it, but probably less now than when you were going through it.
Correct. I mean, again, it was part of the world I was living in. There was a world of, occasional violence. There was a world of, drug dealing's okay, and getting high's okay, and drinking's okay. Womanizing's okay. All these things are what makes rap music so popular and has for a generation now. It is a very dangerous thing, in particular when you're not from there. So I was from there, but I wasn't walking the walk completely. So, there's a difference between people that come up in the streets and real gangsters.
Yeah.
And those are our, not idols, but those are the people that, like any mobster would tell you in a movie, if you've seen it, those are the guys that people idolize. So it was the drug dealer with the cars and the nice clothes, and the girls were attracted to. So there was an inclination to lean
There's a
toward
sexiness,
that.
like you used that word earlier. There was a sexiness and allure to it. But I want to go back to, okay, so you get caught up. You're, do you need a lighter?
Yeah, please.
There you go. Here, flip this. So your mom worked her tail off, and now you're going to prison after she got you to college, or there's the potential of you going to prison. You got caught up, but now you got to go to trial, all that different stuff. What was it like looking at her for the first time?
being that she's the one that bailed me out the first time, it was emotional. It was, I'm sorry. I've embarrassed you. I've brought, shame to you. She knows who I am. She knows my heart because I have her heart. And it's a good heart. But in the moment, it was just raw emotion. Mm-hmm. And when I first saw her after, making bail, it was a big hug and a lot of tears, and everything's going to be okay. And beyond that, there's still alcohol and there's still drugs. So there's a haze over everything that's going on here. Like so many people that won't deal with their everyday problems and, seek out a reprieve through whatever vice that they have. At the time I was all in on, ecstasy and weed and alcohol. So there's this fog, and now there's this big cloud over me of potential going to prison. And I continue to drown myself in those things. So I'm still not
trying.
seeing
Yeah, you
things.
weren't trying to confront reality.
Correct. I still wasn't seeing things clearly. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do to maybe prove my case, to get things going in my favor. It was kind of like, all right, we're going to pay this lawyer and we'll hope for the best. And I think that happens to so many people that are caught up in that situation. And I think even furthermore, there's just people that get caught up in situations and don't even have the means to bail out, or don't even have a means to have a paid attorney. So I was very fortunate to have those things. However, and still, when all was said and done, we still took a plea deal because there were other people with records attached to the incident. So, we weren't going to go to trial and take a chance and do all these things. So I ended up taking a deal for 2 years on an attempted robbery in the second degree. And turns out it was the best fucking thing that ever happened to me. So a wise man once said to me, let the worst thing that ever happened to you be the best thing that ever happened for you. And that was you. And I've used that quote since, but I truly believe that from early on, that this was somehow going to work out in my favor. And that's been a constant theme in my life, even since I was young. I was like, I want better. I know I'm meant for more. I don't have a fucking clue how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
But I believed it. I always believed in my heart that I was meant for more. Down to the fact that, listen, I'm fitter than I've ever been at 45 years old. And I've always said that I'm going to get into fucking phenomenal shape and I'm going to get a six-pack, and for decades. That was not the case, but I never stopped believing that one day I was going to be fit. And to somebody who's been fit for a good part of their life, and yourself,
yeah,
that maybe came naturally. It was a habit you learned early on, and it served you well throughout your life. I had to fucking learn that from the ground up. I had to balloon up to 350, get down to 230, go up to 325, get down to 230. I mean, I've been all over the place. It's been like a roller coaster ride of trying to solve these things on my own. And looking back now, and I'm literally just putting the pieces together as we talk, it's not until I started getting around other people, the same shit I preach to everybody, that I started to make monumental shifts, identity shifts in my own mind. So my own mind that always told me I was going to make it, I don't know how, but I know I'm meant for more, was the same thing that told me I can do it all myself, I'll figure it out. And then, I had to fail. So, there's been so many more failures than successes.
What's always interesting how you say that is the yin-yang symbol. You know what I'm talking about? The Asian yin-yang symbol, right? So, there's a little white spot in the black area and a little black spot in the white area. Yeah. How I've always taken that, and I know there's a bunch of different meanings, but I've always seen that as for every major strength you have a correlating weakness. And for every major weakness you have a correlating strength. Mm. And so the very thing that was making you have a strong will was also the very weakness that was thinking that you could do it on your own.
Yeah. And I think it's the curse of an entrepreneur that wants to do everything on their own. I just had Josiah ask me, how's the real estate stuff going? And I go, it's going good. And, he was looking for a little bit of more detailed explanation. And I just know at this point in my life, that's an investment that's been handed over to people that have a lot more knowledge than me. And I trust that, I do have my eyes on what's going on, but I know that I'm in the right circle with the right people that are going to do right by me, because their success is connected to my success. And that was the real shift, the game changer, the absolute game changer for me as an entrepreneur, a business person, and a human being, was understanding that human beings are your greatest resource. So find the right ones, build a team, build relationships, and just trust the process and be patient. And that only came through falling on my face so many times that I had to just say, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I don't have the solutions yet. So let me try something different, like dramatically different.
Yeah. So you go from running the streets to prison to coming out, starting a sales job, right? It was sales right after?
Sales marketing, yeah.
Sales marketing, right? So
low level, knocking on doors, to Verizon Yellow Pages, to radiology, donut boy marketing.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, if you can knock on doors, you can make a cold call. If you can make a cold call, you can talk to someone that's a warm lead. So I will take the hustle of someone that knocked on doors all day long. I used to try and find recruits from Southwest Books or from College Pro Painters or any of those people that knocked on doors.
Yeah.
I want them as an intern, or I want them as a full-time, because if they can do that, they can make a call.
We've been to some sketchy fucking neighborhoods, knocking on some doors.
Or Cutco knives, something like that.
Trying to sell some shit.
That's right. So you go through all that, and I'm just curious, what type of, because you always have to evolve into the person that you were meant to be to attract the partner that was right for your life, right? So you go from womanizing all the different stuff to getting out of prison. You know you're meant for more. What did you have to do inside yourself to become the man to attract your wife?
That's a fucking crazy story too. So I get goosebumps because
you literally, folks, he's not lying. He's not bullshit. He's got goosebumps.
No, because my wife and I met through chance. I was a marketing guy, and she happened to be new at one of the doctor's offices that I was visiting. And this is a pretty cool story. She was 2 blocks, the office was 2 blocks from the radiology center, but they never sent us not one MRI or CAT scan or x-ray, nothing. And I'm like, we're the closest thing, we're 2 blocks away. They were sending their patients, God knows how many, miles away to another center, because they had a relationship with that center. Lo and behold, my wife is now the referral coordinator for this place. And I'm the marketing guy who knocks on this door repeatedly and gets no business. But this day, she goes, the girl at the front goes, meet the new referral coordinator in the back. And I walk to the back, and she's at her desk, and she looks up at me, and I look down at her, and we're like, ooh, something immediately. And it's physical, because she's great looking, and I'm, I'd like to think I'm good looking too. So it was a physical connection immediately. All of a sudden next week, I'm getting referrals for the first time from this office 2 blocks away that has never sent me a lick of business before. And that's how I met my wife. Mind you, this is 9 months. No, this is about a year before I go to prison.
Oh, was it before?
Yeah. Our first date was on November 11th, 11/11. So she used to she used to joke to her colleagues before we had ever dated, before we had each other's numbers or anything. She was like, that guy's going to be my husband one day. No bullshit. And when she left that job, she texted me and said, hey, this is Jen. This is my number. Call me sometime. I was like, holy shit. And I remember our first date was on 11/11. And, I didn't realize the significance at the time, but that's considered the angel number, right? The protector, the angel. And 9 months after our first date, no, not 9 months. I want to say about a year. A year later, I go to prison. So I turned myself in November 9th. Our anniversary, first year from the first date, is November 11th, 2 days after. So our first anniversary, I'm shipped off to do my 2 years. And she's my ride or die, man. She's in it. We complement each other. We are fucking polar opposites. And we've been winging it and figuring it out since. So it's amazing when you ask that question. I didn't attract the woman of my dreams, the universe put her in front of me
Mm.
at one of the darkest times in my life. And, you know, now that I've worked through a lot of my own bullshit, that's what gave me so much hope while I was away. That's what allowed me to start to make the shifts in my thinking that would then lead to the successes that will come over the next decade when I was released, which was, all right, first and foremost, I've got somebody waiting for me on the other side who loves me, who wants me to be here, and is sticking by me. And it's not just my mom, you know, it's a woman that
It gave you hope
gave me hope.
and a reason to be better.
Correct. And just something to look forward to come home to. Because if I'm not coming home to her, what am I going home to? My mom, back to my bedroom where I grew up? I don't know. But thank God I met my wife before going to prison. And yeah, God works in mysterious ways. And I think we mentioned this before we came in, which is it's pretty obvious when your eyes are open to it or in hindsight.
Yeah.
But at the time it was, you know, not so obvious to me. So
And you guys
I can't say that I worked up to any great, you know, likability or you know, enhance my values to attract a woman. It just came to me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it works like
most.
that. Sometimes it works when you're least expecting it. I think, you know, God places people in our life, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a mentor, whatever it may be, when we're not looking for it, but when we need it.
You don't get what you want, you get what you need.
That's right.
And I needed that. And I needed to go to prison, to be honest. That night could have turned out a lot uglier. I'm a pretty big dude. Not somebody that, you know, you want to necessarily frolic with. So, you know, weapons, outnumbered, you know. It could have went a lot of different ways, but it didn't. And while away, I actually learned the emotional intelligence that I had been lacking, so deeply lacking.
How'd you do that in prison?
Well, any kind of violent crime or anything that's classified as, you know, doing harm, you're going to go to anger management. And when you go to anger management, it's a course. It's like going to school and, you know, there's periods or a certain time you got to show up every day or a certain amount of days a week. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was called ART. And I don't even know what that stands for now. But I remember it was like, all right, you got to anger, you did harm. You know, but what led you to do harm to someone else? To the point where they angered you so much. It wasn't like we were in a, you know, just a random drunken college brawl or something like that. This was like a criminal thing. So what led you to this point where you committed violence against someone else? And there's a psychological component, and they have people who are essentially teachers, counselors, but they're professionals, and they come in, and it's a shame that, you know, 90+% of the room isn't really listening. They're not giving it a chance. They're not giving it any value. They're kind of just doing their time and you're forcing me to do this shit, so I'll be here. But I actually took it in. And I learned about myself. I was also sober for 2 years. And that also gave me the clarity to learn about myself.
It's amazing how much clarity you have when you're not drinking.
Yeah.
People don't even realize Dr. Daniel Amen has talked about the gray matter in the brain, even when you have a little bit of alcohol, let alone people that drink on a regular basis.
Yeah. Marijuana, I know it's, again, you know, I'm not knocking it, but anything used in, you know, in high volume is going to affect your ability to think clearly. Some people thrive on it, others don't. You know, for me personally, it's just not something that served me. So I'm making that connection. You know, in prison, I'm sober for the first time, and my life is great because I'm reading self-development for the first time. I pick up Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within for the first time in a prison cell, and I literally map out what will become the next 10 years of my life in a composition notebook, black and white, old school notebook. And I had probably half a dozen of them. And I read a couple hundred books over the course of 2 years. And I started to define the things that were going to shape my life, the thought processes that successful people had to shape their lives, and the things that winners did, how to win friends and influence people. I read in there. I actually have a list of the books. I've got to, rehash that now that I'm mentioning it and see what books I read in there, because they had a tremendous impact. And I remember telling Tony Robbins that story when I met him last October. And he's like, holy shit. And I have this, and again, the universe is amazing because everybody's waiting to meet Tony Robbins at the end of the event. And I wait my turn patiently. And, in true New York fashion, I woke up, how you doing, Tony? And he goes, I'd ask you, but I can feel you. And I swear to God, Josh, never in my life have I met a human being where a vibration comes off of them. Maybe you have, because you've been around some really high level people. Yeah. And you know what I'm talking about.
It's that vibrational frequency.
Dude, we were on the same fucking wavelength. And I put my hand on Tony's chest, and I'm 6'3", 250, and Tony makes me look small. His hands are like boxing gloves.
Dude's huge.
Head is massive, and he's got a heart that dwarfs it all. And I tell him that story. It's like, Tony, I wrote this goal 12 years ago in a prison cell. He goes, holy shit. He puts his hand on my massive mitt on my shoulder. I put my hand on his heart. And I've got video from 3 different angles of this conversation from 3 different people that happened to be there at the time. I didn't ask, but one person to take a picture. And 3 people got this video interaction that I'll now have for the rest of my life. But that was a moment of validation. Like, holy shit, full circle. From a prison cell that I'm going to walk over hot coals, like he, writes about in his Unleash the Power Within book. And I had done that already. And now I'm part of his, mentorship program. And now I'm meeting the guy in person, and we're vibrating off of each other, and we've got our hands on each other, and we're in that moment. And that was just the validation I needed to know that my journey was I was now on the journey that I was always supposed to be on. But I had to go through the mud. I had to go through the shit. I had to make the comeback to make the story that much more readable or attractive. Like you said, you could have high-level business people here, and we could be talking strategy on how to run an office. And that's great stuff.
It is. It's tactical and it's applicable. And we'll get to some. Well, it's not even that it's sexy. It's that this not as sexy. It's that what you just said and the story that you just told makes you more relatable, because we all fuck up.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. We may not make the mistake that we end up in prison, but we've made the mistake that we've cheated on our spouse and they divorced us. We've made the mistake where we screwed up in business and lost it all. And like I started this with, people will be
dishonest,
or just being whatever, even little stuff.
Yeah.
Because the only perfect person to ever walk this earth was Jesus. The rest of us are flawed human beings living a human experience that are going to mess up and hopefully learn.
Hopefully learn.
Not everyone does.
No, unfortunately.
But you did. And so I want to talk about how you got to Tony Robbins' event, because now that you've become successful in your own right and continue to build your own legacy and navigate your course, you paid a significant sum of money to be a part of this.
Sure.
6-figure something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well over.
So that's where, so why do you choose? Now, it wasn't just to meet Tony Robbins because you wrote it down in your prison cell.
Well, I didn't write it down to meet him. I just wrote it down to walk over the hot coals and attend the seminar.
Yeah, that's right, a much cheaper
like
expense.
A hell of a lot bonus.
Yeah, that's
UPW,
a much.
you can go for $600.
Yeah, exactly.
But this
was a 6-figure expense.
This was one of his private events for his platinum partnership. So the way I find Tony is pretty cool too. And once again, it's my angel, my wife. After I got sober, which was also thanks to her and a seemingly just passing comment. It was like, dude, your breath smells like alcohol. And I'm like, 7:30 in the morning. I just rinsed my mouth out with Listerine. So I'm thinking she's maybe smelling that. And I said, well, I just rinsed my mouth out with Listerine. And she goes, no, you smell like alcohol, like all the time. And this is because I'm drinking every day. And I'm drinking at home. And I'm in the house, but I'm not present because I don't want to deal with the work that it's going to take to become the husband I need to be or the father that I'm supposed to be. So I'm just drowning myself in what's always worked for me. Alcohol, weed. Let's just not deal with it. Let's go watch some Netflix. One night, she tells me that my breath stinks, and I don't fight her on it because I know that I'm an alcoholic at this point. I am remiss to tell the story of the day or the night that I had to wake up and take a shot of vodka because I couldn't sleep. And, thank God I've never had the shakes or, any significant withdrawals, but just trying to stop drinking and having those butterflies and anxiety over the course of the week and not being able to sleep, it was driving me nuts. To one point I got up and I had to drink vodka to then go to sleep. And boy, the shame that comes with that is fuck, I'm what I thought I would never become. And meanwhile, I'm making 7 figures. I live in a great house. My backyard's like a resort. Everything looks good on the way in. You come to Sean's house, we're drinking Johnny Blue. We're drinking, Don Julio, 42. We're drinking the good stuff. But I was an alcoholic at that point in my life. She tells me that. Don't fight her on it. I run a business, so I decide, I'm going to go to rehab, but I can't go to rehab and just disappear running a business.
An inpatient one. You couldn't go to an inpatient one.
Correct. But I ended up going into a detox facility. So I went into a detox facility because for anybody listening who's familiar, and this is one of the powerful points of the story, I've overcome so many fucking obstacles to get here and to be able to share them. I know that there's somebody that's going to listen to this and be like, oh shit, I'm not the only one. And that's why I do it. You're getting a lot of juice out of me today that I didn't expect to share, but I ended up. I
have that effect on people.
It must be the cigars.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's not me. It's the cigar.
You warm myself with the cigars and the nice leather chairs, and then just let her rip. So check myself into detox. I always joke I'm an overachiever. They try to give me sedatives and all kinds of shit, and I'm like, listen, I don't have the shakes. Thank God. I need something to help me sleep. Mind you, I could have found that on the street somewhere. I could have probably went to my doctor and asked for benzos and try to kick it myself. But I don't know. I learned things the hard way. So I put myself in detox. You're supposed to be there for 6 days. So we plan out, all right, what's going to happen if someone calls in the business? And all right, you tell them this. I'll call you once or twice a day from the day room and we'll work out whatever you need to respond as me so nobody knows that I'm here. I'm out in 3 days because I refused the Xanax and any of the heavy sedatives that they give everybody. And I said, listen, I just want, something to help me sleep. And they ended up giving me a strong allergy pill that just happened to be a side effect that knocks you out. And I was released in 3 days. And they couldn't believe it because they were like, you drank a lot for a long time. Most people don't have this experience. But, I attended some AA meetings that they brought in. They had a meditation guy come in. They had an acupuncture guy came in. I paid for this out of pocket, and my insurance covers some of it, thankfully. But I think being in that experience was, again, it was like a jail reminder. How did we get here again? You're a fucking millionaire, dude. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you doing in detox? My wife had the courage to say, your breath smells like alcohol. And now that we talk about it, she's like, dude, I was watching you kill yourself. Almost every day, just fucking drinking for no reason. And this is the person that loves me more than anybody else, even my mother. So she didn't have to do much convincing because I knew that I had a problem. So I come home, and within a couple of weeks of coming home, she's like, hey, Tony Robbins is having a seminar down in Palm Beach. You should go.
That was the UPW.
That was the UPW.
Yeah.
These things are hard to keep lit and talking so much. But
you're doing the heavy lifting, right? Because I'm getting you to talk.
Yeah, you're getting all the tea, my friend. You're like Kermit over there with the little pinky up. So I go to UPW. What a fucking amazing experience. I mean, it's like a concert for self-development. The energy in the room is just palpable. Never been to anything like that in my life. 9,000 people jumping up and down for this man who's created more change in the world than, most people would ever aspire to.
Yeah.
He really is the GOAT. Thank God for Tony Robbins and all of his disciples. And, I say that loosely and jokingly, but he's somebody who's dedicated his life to changing others, and those people then go out and do the same. And I intend to be one of them, just like you are on your mission through your channels and your masterminds and your community. You're spreading that that energy out into the world. Last day of the seminar, it's a 4-day seminar. First day, you're walking on hot coals within 14 hours of being there. Yes, day one is 14 fucking hours. And at the end of it, you walk out and you walk over this maybe 12-foot pile of steaming, burning hot coals, fire red. And I mean, I wasn't that special. There was 7,000 other people doing it, and that was empowering. Last day of the seminar, I go up to the desk to sign up possibly for the virtual community, which is, $15,000 for the year, and you can access all the virtual events. And I'm committed to that idea because the other idea for 6 figures to me is just like, what the fuck?
It's crazy. It's a big jump.
It's crazy. God is good, man. They took me from that table and I got to go outside and speak to my wife about this decision. Now, I didn't have to speak to my wife, but I wanted to go visit the platinum table. And they tell me the number. I'm like, holy shit. And I don't like being sold. So during the whole event, there's points where it becomes, they're selling. And I would walk out of the room and get coffee, go to the bathroom, do whatever I got to do because I don't want to be sold. Last day, I end up signing up. And I think the funniest story, I think I've told you this before, but I'll share it with your audience. I go to the platinum table. They tell me the number. I'm in a little bit of a sticker shock because I've never done anything like this, in my life. The most expensive things I've ever bought were my house up to that point and invested in my business. So investing in a program, so much money was just not something I was familiar with. So I go to the bathroom and I'm backed up from all the coffee and the protein bars and all that nonsense that I'm eating because they don't give you many eating breaks and there's not good food at those big events. And I guess I do my best thinking on the toilet because I was like, dude, why the fuck are you talking yourself out of this amazing experience, which in your heart, you've already said to yourself 100 times, this is where I need to be. These are the people I need to be around. This is what I've been looking for a very long time, and I found it. So I come out of the bathroom. There's nobody at the platinum desk. I just start filling out the paperwork, sit in the chair behind the counter like it's my place. And then, Tony's brother-in-law comes back and Joanne, who are the 2 people who run that platinum partnership. And I'm already, done with the application. And they're like, oh, great. You came back and filled it out. And let me tell you, best fucking decision I ever made in my life. I realized in that moment that people are so willing to invest in cars and stocks, and jewelry and just shit, like if you're investing in assets or things that are going to make you money and more secure in the long term, I get it. But like we are looking for significance and importance and we're trying to scratch an inch of being, or appearing to have more than we have. The best thing we can do for ourselves is invest in ourselves.
Yes.
And I just happen to write a check for the most expensive mastermind in the world. And I don't have one regret. It was an amazing, amazing year. His Date with Destiny event was transcendent. I mean, it just opened the door to a new level of thinking. And that guy who always knew that he'd make it, but not know how he was going to make it. Now I'm fully in charge of, all right, you own your own destiny. And you've heard this a million times, but you don't believe it. Because, to me to say I'm going to be a millionaire one day, to be, let's scale back a little. When you come from somebody who, my mom never made more than $50,000 in a year and we lived in a project apartment. I was making $100,000 before I went to jail. 6 figures in the hood back in the day was the shit. I'm going to make 6 figures and I'm going to be rich. And they get to 6 figures and like, oh, this is great, but this isn't
not
really,
rich.
it's not even close
Especially
to rich.
in New York City.
No, definitely not. I mean, cost of living is ridiculous, even back then. But then you start to graduate. You're thinking, all right, well, how do I get to $1 million? Because this 6 figures thing, I've done this already. I did that before going to prison. Now I come home. How am I going to get to $1 million? And I'm still stuck in the trap. I'm still, not figuring things out. But I had to go through all that. I had to continue numbing my greatness. So I always say that I think a lot of people are less familiar with the idea of the fear of success than the fear of failure.
100%.
I think the fear of failure thing is an used term.
100% agree.
I think it's the fear of success that scares people more.
Well, tell them why.
Because they don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Who the fuck do I know other than the drug dealer that drove a nice car?
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody who really owned houses. I had aunts that owned houses, but like they weren't living lavishly or anything like that.
And what if I get there and I can't repeat it?
Correct. What if I'm not
Or what
good
if
enough?
I fall down? What if I'm an imposter and it's just by chance? I 100% agree. I've seen this over and over. And the people that fear success mask it with the fear of failure. Like I'm fear of failure. That's why I work so hard. No, it's your fear of success as to why you don't make more, because you keep yourself busy instead of actually being productive.
Correct. And it's also the ability to let go. And let go is a loaded term because you have to let go of the idea of controlling the outcome. You can only control as much effort as you put into it. Even the greats, the Tom Brady's, the Kobe Bryant's, they're on record of saying, you can only control the variables, but it may not be your night. You can't always control the outcome. You can just do your best to control the outcome. And those who were the best prepared usually had the best outcome. But there was also the heart factor and, how much drive they had and moxie and, things that, the intangibles that made them great. But yeah, fear of failure is a real thing that I don't think people address enough. I remember taking a book of self-test, one of these little books I had, and it was like 15 or 17 different psychological tests. And at the end of each little questionnaire would score you. And my fear of success was literally not on the page. It was off the chart. They didn't have a reading for somebody as scared of success as I was. That was like, holy shit, I'm that scared. But something inside me, I'm like, dude, I know I'm great. I know I have the ability to be great. I know I got knocked on my ass. I know I didn't have a great upbringing. I know I didn't have the right decisions being made. But boy, oh boy, I always knew I was meant for something more. I just didn't know how much more and how great I could be. And then when I started to peek into how good I could be, I started to realize that I was afraid of how great I could be, right? What is it? It's often misquoted and given to Nelson Mandela, who's an amazing figure, but it was a woman who I think said it. And it starts, we're not afraid of our fears, but our greatest self, something to that effect. And that was me. And still to this day, I struggle with that because I have such ambition to go out and shape the world and impact lives that, again, who do I know outside of a Tony Robbins or an Ed Milet or an Andy Frisella or, all these guys we see on social, making the strides to be impactful in the world. And that's ultimately what I want to do is go back and teach these lessons. God gave me this gift of gab. They put me in marketing and cold calling positions at the age of 17 as an intern. They put me in jail. I met my wife. I went through alcoholism. I came out the other end better for it. I meet Tony Robbins telling the story, and the list goes on and on. And that's how I just know I'm on the path. And you've heard me say it before. When you step into your purpose and you stop being afraid and you're clear and you start to put in the work, most importantly, toward a goal, the universe seems fit to roll out the red carpet for you. And that's how the last 2 years of my life have been. August 11th will make 2 years sober. It has been the best 20 whatever months of my life by far. Not even
awesome.
comparable. Nothing comparable.
You just said something important there about the universe. A lot of people think the universe is out to get them, when the universe wants nothing more than you to win, because the universe was designed by who? By God. God created everything we see, including us. And so for us to think that the universe is out to get us, or there's some existential force that's out to get us, is actually not living in love, but living in fear.
Yeah.
God is love. Therefore, the universe is love. Therefore, you are love.
Yeah.
And all we got to do is align those things versus living in fear, which is what the enemy wants.
And it is a huge perspective shift for many to make. Unfortunately, a lot will never make it because it's not something you can see, feel, or touch outside of your heart. And it's not until I let go, bringing it full circle, in AA meetings, the first tenet there is you came to the conclusion that you were powerless over your addictions, right? And, let God take the wheel, basically, because you ain't got this, right? For lack of,
Yeah.
an articulate explanation. So after coming out of the detox, I find myself in Alcoholics Anonymous rooms. I also invested now, connecting the dots. I've invested in myself after that experience. They had a paid program where you got to speak to a counselor twice a week because I had to do outpatient because I'm running a business. I'm fortunately a successful business person and I can't disappear in a 30, 60-day program. So I do outpatient. Now you can go to free meetings anywhere, they're easy to find. But I wanted professional. So I signed up. I threw a couple of grand a month at the idea of getting on these virtual calls with a guy twice a week. I went to an in-person meeting, and then I went to a group meeting, and then I went to an AA meeting. So you're talking 5 meetings a week of addressing the issue of my substance abuse. But I still don't wrap my head around the concept of letting go. And I'm in the room, and I'm reading the 12 steps, and I'm like, damn, I'm pretty blessed. I don't know if it's my arrogance or if I'm truly blessed to not suffer from a lot of these afflictions, like, promptly admitting when you're wrong and making amends. And like, I never stepped over anybody or was blind to an emotional impact that I had on a person or, I was pretty aware and I had good relationships, but I had a problem drinking because I wasn't leaning into God. I wasn't leaning into my purpose. So I decide one day to muster up the courage to ask somebody to be a sponsor. And great guy, he's been sober for 7 years, hardcore. There's different kinds of Alcoholics Anonymous rooms, there's different kind of Narcotics Anonymous rooms. And this was more of a hardcore room where they call them the big book thumpers. Like they live and die by this big book, the Alcoholics Anonymous book. And what a great, amazing program. It's helped so many people.
So many.
I mean, across the world. So I have nothing bad to say. But I'm in this room and I'm saying, I'm an alcoholic, so I do this. I think this way because I'm an alcoholic. And meanwhile, I'm going to Tony Robbins at the same time. And this isn't lining up because I'm learning about changing your identity. So it's not lining up because I don't want to identify as an alcoholic before everything that I do or I say. So I lean into the sponsor. He gets me to get on my knees and pray. Now, over the years, I've always been grateful. I've been brought to tears. I've been at resorts where I just sit out on the balcony. I'm staring at the ocean and the beautiful palm trees, or, I'm in Costa Rica, and I just look up and I say, thank you, God. And so I always had a connection. But it wasn't until my sponsor convinced me to get on my knees and pray that everything kind of fell into place. And that's what I mean by letting go.
Mm.
I still, despite having grace in my life and despite believing, I still was lost because I hadn't given over the idea of controlling the outcome. So my sponsor doesn't last a long time in my life because, again, I'm at odds with this belief system I'm learning from self-development versus where you control the outcome, or not the outcome, but you control who you want to become.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this, well, you're powerless over your addiction and this is who you are. And that was always at odds with me. Again, amazing program. I could only pray to impact a fraction of the lives that program has and will. But it wasn't for me. And on the 6-month anniversary of being sober, I remember vividly going up to get my coin and a few people congratulating me on the way back to my chair. And I hug the person who gives me the coin. And it's genuine love and support. Halfway there, bro. And people tap me on the shoulder and I go back to my seat and they're like, Sean. And I'm like, oh, my name is Sean and I'm an alcoholic. And right there in that moment, I knew I didn't belong there anymore. And maybe one day, God willing, I don't have to find myself back in that room. But I got the message.
Yeah.
I got the message. And again, like prison, like detox, and now AA and getting on my knees. I got the message. And the important part there is because I was willing to get the message. I wasn't going to blame the universe. I wasn't going to blame the government for my problems. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save me. I'm going to have to save myself. And through that, I can save and make a comfortable life for the people that I love. My family will be secure forever. And now that that's shored up, my marriage is shored up and better than ever. My relationship with my kids is shored up. Now I can go out there and make impact because I have a home to come to. I have a God that loves me and wants to see me win and make impact in the world. So
that's my bridge number 2. Spiritual 1, relationships 2.
all right.
Professional doesn't come till bridge 4. So you
What's
got
number 3?
Internal, mental, physical being.
Gotcha.
So one thing you said there that I want, and we got to wrap up, but God doesn't want a connection with you. He wants a relationship with you. And that's what you started discovering. It's because you always had that connection, and that's good. But the relationship, that walk, that's better.
Yeah.
So I want to say something to Jen quick because I know she's going to listen.
Jen?
Yeah. You're a real one, Jen.
Yes, she is.
You know how many women nowadays would have left you for that prison sentence, or would have left you because of the alcoholism?
Yeah. It's my ride or die.
That's a real woman.
That's my ride or die. Super supportive. We're just as attracted and in love with each other as ever. And I've started to put in the work on those things too. It takes work. And I think, people are willing to put in work to get money and to get some kind of significance in their professional field or recognition, but they do it at the expense of their family. They do it at the expense of the people they love the most.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't necessarily Michael Jordan or Tom Brady. We've seen those things play out, right?
It's everyday people.
It's everyday people. It's the guy that, is the shipping manager. It's the fucking guy who wants to work his way up and puts in the extra hours, but his kids only see him on the weekend. When he comes home, he's shot. I've designed a life that I can wake up every day, go to bed every night, and do what I want in between. And that comes from Bob Dylan, so I'm not going to take credit for that. But
we got a Bronx boy that's a Bob Dylan fan.
Dude, I am a student of life, of the game of life. And I want to go out there and encourage, first and foremost, my people. And by people, my people, I always relate to inner city youth, inner city people that I'm familiar with that came up in the same struggle as me, black and brown in particular, because I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican. I grew up around African Americans. But it pertains to everybody. Mm-hmm. Be a student of the game, because if you consider life a game and you learn to play by the rules, you can get good at it. But like any game, you got to practice, you got to keep doing it, and you got to fail to get better at it. And boy, I failed enough. But the willingness to learn and the ability to not give up is the only thing that kind of separates me from the people who started where I started. So I'm extremely fortunate. I'm not going to waste the opportunity and all the blessings that I've been bestowed by just being comfortable, having a nice house and, making a nice living and making sure my kids dress nice and go on vacation and wear nice things. I want to go back and speak to these kids. And I think that my story will resonate, because if I'm just a guy who's going up there, and I'll use the classic example of you go to school and what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm a firefighter or a policeman or the lawyer, and the doctor comes in to speak to the kids. That's all good and well. But when the guy who fucked up, like I fucked up, tells you that you can do it too, I just think there's a message that's going to resonate a little more strongly with the people who need it the most. So I just want to go back and plant those seeds, because I don't think there's enough, being planted. And there's always people that are going to be left behind in society. And despite where some of those people who may think that they're gaming the system and getting over, the truth is, whatever, you're just surviving. You're literally surviving. You're not living life. You're never taking a vacation. You're never driving a car. You can't get a loan. There's rules to this game, and it's spiritual. First and foremost, it's financial. There's relationships. Life is tough when you don't have a blueprint for how to live it correctly, or even remotely correctly. Because even though we both live pretty good lives, from everything I know, we're always learning.
Always.
And that humility is what's going to allow more grace to come into our life.
Humble
More
confidence.
abundance. Yeah.
Humble
I just
confidence.
heard that today from the Ed Milet podcast. Beautiful.
That's good. So, but this is exactly why what you just said there, I wanted your story, because it's going to help so many. And the more you tell it, the better it's going to feel. And it's going to impact so many lives. So thank you, brother.
I appreciate you giving me the platform, brother.
You got it. So last question I always ask, what's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with? Go from the gut. There might be several.
That life is unfair. Now, I believe that to be true, and it probably is, but it really is a perspective shift and a thinking shift. So, I couldn't outline how to find whatever success that you're looking to find in life. But you're the only person that's going to allow you to find whatever success, happiness, fulfillment that the world has to offer. There's absolutely no scenario that is going to keep you from doing that, because there's men and women on death row that have somehow found the strength to open up a Bible and find that spirituality that they may have been missing all their life. So we are the masters of our own destiny. And while I am very aware that there's social constructs and unfairness in the world, I truly believe with all my heart that you can overcome anything.
And you're living proof of it.
Absolutely. And there's levels of that because, we still were I was raised with love. And we didn't have money necessarily, but I had a work ethic that was taught to me by my mom, and I had love. And there's people that don't even have those two things. So they're really working for me. They're working themselves out of a hole.
Yeah.
And that's why I hope to go back and give them a male role model of someone who, understands. Maybe I didn't experience the lack of love. Maybe I didn't experience the extreme poverty or trauma that you did. I have my own story and you have your own story. But listen, this story's giving me power. And if your story's worse, technically, it's the power that you have not seen
or
that
harnessed.
you can use or harness, right? To shape your life and then others' lives. So the most traumatic stories can be the most influential and transformative if they're able to harness that pain and look forward. So no matter how terrible whatever has happened to you you have the power to overcome it. So I think that's an unpopular truth that I believe.
I love it. I love it. Where can people follow you?
The Sean Martin on Instagram and
S-E-A-N.
on TikTok. Yes, SEAN. The TheSeanMartin. You can Google us, YouTube. We've got SeanMartinSpeaker.com. And then ultimately the program that I'm putting together, which is going to make this impact in the world and in my community, is the Real Mentors program. So REAL stands for REAL, Real Life Examples, Altering Lives. And that can also be found online at realmentors.com.
Love it. Well, thank you again.
My pleasure.
Welcome to Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes, sir.
Got you here. Got you to the Midwest.
I never would have thought I would come.
Probably didn't even know. A lot of East Coasters, we're just the flyover state. Y'all don't even know we exist over here.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
But, I haven't had a reason to come here, but I'm so glad I did.
Sean's going to go feed the alpacas now.
Yes, and the goats.
Yeah, that's right.
I got to bring
do
the
that.
family out here. My family would love this place.
I know. The kids would love it. Hey, Spartan audience, you know what to do. Share this far and wide. Remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.